Hi everybody, Ira Bruce here with Independent News Network, or the IN is how we like to call it. INN for Independent News Network. So today we're going to talk about Wokism. That's kind of something that I think about all the time. It's near and dear to my heart. Being an independent voter, and again, this channel is made for independent voters and what I consider, since we're independent voters, we vote either way. We can vote either Republican or Democrat, and you can do that if you're a Republican or Democrat anyways, you know, in the main election. But for primaries, we're kind of cut out, which I feel like is not fair to us, but that's another topic that we're going to talk about, you know, the fairness of the primary votes for independent voters, because really, my view is there should be no parties whatsoever, because parties are what destroy this political environment. There shouldn't be Democrats or there shouldn't be Republicans, because in my opinion, there's pretty much most, not all, but most Republicans and Democrats vote along party lines. Right? So I feel like that's kind of crazy, and that's why I'm an independent voter speaking to my audience, which I'm assuming are independent voters as well. And we just want to speak our mind. We want to vote whoever we want to vote for. We don't want to be held by party lines. We want to be voting for the person who is the best candidate, whether Democrat or Republican. So as I've mentioned in the past, as an independent voter, I've mostly voted in my life along Democratic Party lines, you know, starting way back, I guess not way back, but back in the Bill Clinton days. I really felt like Bill Clinton, you know, he erased the deficit in the United States. I really thought, you know, that was a huge accomplishment. Nobody's ever done that before or since, and that would really help. And I was really hoping that Donald Trump was going to accomplish that in his second term, and he wasn't afforded a second term just yet. But I felt like, as a businessman, Donald Trump had his finger on the best thing and how to run a government here in as a business. And so to me, that's kind of the best way to run this government, is as a business, right? So anyways, let's go to our topic of wokeism. So what is wokeism? Well, wokeism to me are ideologies that are pushed by a very minute and minority part of the, well, today is the progressive movement. Isn't that a catchy term? The progressive movement. Kind of makes you want to think, wow, they're progressive. These people are kind of out front. They're the ones that are really doing all the cool things, all the progressive things. But in my opinion, that couldn't be any further from the truth, because what these people are pushing are not progressive ideas, right? To me, it's almost going backwards to the Marxism days, you know, backwards to socialism. I mean, who wants socialism in a free country like the United States? If you're a socialist, if you're a Marxist, if you subscribe to those ideas like many of these progressives do, you are not advocating for a free country, for a free way of thinking. Quite the opposite, right? So, you know, what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to turn this country into a government-run country where everybody, I guess, is treated equally in their minds. And so everybody, I guess, would be middle class across the board. And it doesn't matter how high you rise. What you're going to end up with oligarchs in this country, just like Russia has. We don't want anything like that. We want people to excel based on hard work, right? And based on forward thinking, not on these socialistic ideas that these woke, progressive people are trying to advocate for us. So those are people like Bernie Sanders. Those are people like George Soros, who's trying to turn this country into a socialistic country, which just boggles my mind. Why would somebody like George Soros, who came from Hungary, who came from a repressed country, want to come to our country, to a free nation, and try to progress his ideas of socialism in this country? You know, look, if you want socialism, George Soros, go back to wherever they have socialistic run countries. Don't come to this country and take your billions and billions of dollars that you were most successful in earning because, well, I guess he wants to be one of the oligarchs of the country is what he wants to do. And, you know, everybody needs to kind of focus on that and focus on George Soros. And also, not only on George Soros, but a lot of the large corporations that have agendas that they want progressed into this country. So let's go back and start with the progressives, okay? So we have a small fraction of these people are called the squad. So right here, we have the squad, and these are members of Congress who are trying to push their progressive ideas. So here you have Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, and Cori Bush, right? These are the people, this is the squad who are trying to push their progressive, their quote unquote progressive ideas. And, you know, so what amazes me is that a small fraction of this group, like the progressive movement, can generate such fear in a lot of these big corporations. And to me, I don't understand how a small fraction like these folks can go ahead and instill fear in so many of these huge corporations. These big corporations fear being canceled. So what I don't get is how these big corporations can fear being boycotted, or fear being canceled by such a minute part of this progressive movement. It just doesn't, I don't understand why they don't consider the majority of the country, which, trust me, the majority of the country does not want to have anything to do with this progressive movement, right? We just want to be free. We want to be able to work hard. We want to get paid for exactly what we work for, and forget about this socialistic Marxism type of movement that these progressives are trying to push. So rather than being called socialists, rather than being called Marxists, they come up with this term, they're the progressives, to give you a good feeling about them. Well, don't let that fool you at all, okay? So let's talk about Wokism. That's what I wanted to start this whole conversation about, Wokism. So that's the term that they use. That's another feel-good term. You know, we're woke. We're finally woke now to what's going on around us. And, you know, we want to defund the police. We're woke now. And we see how evil the police are. And so we want to defund the police. That's part of their wokeism ideology, right? So soft on crime, right? Where is that going to get this country by being soft on crime. It's just going to be chaos. So let's just call it what it is. And, this progressive movement is just a crazy ideology. It's just socialism, and it's Marxism, and it's just so counterproductive to what this country is really all about, and that's being a free and fair society. So a lot of them are saying, oh, well, that's not fair. It's not a fair country because we're repressed, right? So we want to be unrepressed, and that's why we're calling for defunding the police, because the police are repressing us. No, the police aren't repressing anybody. Granted, as in anything in society, in any organization, there's going to be a fraction of bad apples, but you cannot judge that organization as a whole with a few bad apples that might, turn up in that organization, right? So, but what these progressives do, they try to take those bad apples, and they try to turn it into the whole organization is just like these people, and it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think we're starting to realize that today, right? At first, even President Biden was saying, yes, we need to do something with the police department. We need to reestablish the police department or whatever. The soft on crime thing, the no bail thing. Well, where did that come from, right? So you have this minority caucus, and what they're saying is that these people are being repressed, they're being unfairly judged just based on skin color. And honestly, I do not feel like that. That could not be further from the truth, in my opinion, if you look at everything. So if you really watch the news, you're seeing all of these soft on crime people commit crimes over and over and over again. They're let out, they commit another crime, they're let out, they commit another crime. Finally, I'm going to use the railroad heists out in California as an example. Even Governor Gavin Newsom went out there and said, this is crazy, this is ridiculous. All these people out there hijacking all these railroad cars and going through all the packages and ripping all the packages open and stealing stuff that's not theirs. Going to the riots. These people were breaking into stores under the guise of reparation. They're saying this is reparation. We're just getting paid back for all the years of repression. From what I see in this country, the minorities have a greater chance of being successful with all the government programs that are out there to help them along the way. There's things like grants, scholarships, all kind of grants and scholarships for minorities to go ahead and further their education, which in turn would further their careers. And so a lot of the minorities are not taking advantage of everything that is out there for them. If you want to talk about reparation, take advantage of these scholarships and these grants that the government offers to you as a minority. There's your reparation. Turn your education into success. Turn your education into a career that will make you very rich in a lot of cases. So there's the best way to get reparation is take advantage of the schooling that you can get in your career. But again, going back to the wokism, here's one of the things that I will tell you that I think came out of this pandemic and in the form of Wokism. And so when we look back in history, we're going to look back and say that if it wasn't for the pandemic, that CRT, the critical race theory that is being taught in our schools, never would have been exposed. But, thankfully, that has been exposed, and parents of children all of a sudden got woke to the fact of what is being taught in our schools. And the critical race theory is really nothing more than trying to teach our kids to be socialists, to be Marxists. And so parents now have the wokeness of seeing what's being taught to their children. And so that's, to me, going to be the number one best thing that has come out of this pandemic, because if the kids weren't kept at home and being taught virtually, and parents weren't able to see what was going on through the Zoom, then we would still have blinders on and have no idea what's being taught in our schools, and especially our colleges, to turn kids into the socialistic thinking that this country needs to be more along the lines of Marxism and socialism than a free society. Because kids today look at that and they go, yeah, I want free stuff. I want the government to go ahead and give me free things. Well, folks, that's just not the way this free society works. So if we didn't have a free society, if we turned it into the socialistic country that like the Squad wants to turn it into, or the Congressional Progressive Caucus wants to turn it into, we have to be woke as independent voters, because we as independent voters can sway this voting one way or the other. Because if you think about it, Republicans make up about 50% of the votes. Democrats, well, let's Republicans make up about 40% of the votes. Democrats make up the other 40%. And we as independents, let's just say, make up 20. So if you have these parties all in, 40 and 40, what's going to tip the scales to one side or the other? It's going to be us, the independent voter. And that's exactly why I decided to go ahead and start this channel, the Independent News Network, and the N. So what I'm going to do is give us a platform where we can start talking amongst each other. We can start making comments. And you know what? We're going to have haters. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And hopefully we can weed out these haters and us as independent voters, because we need to channel our energy. And if we get a bunch of haters on this channel, then we need to look at that. And we need to dissect that as to what these haters are all about. And we need to go away from whatever their format is, because it is what it is. This is America. And we're supposed to have freedom of speech, except if you look at a lot of these Twitter and you look at Facebook censoring what we have to say, then that's not being a free society. And that's another video that I want to make. I want to talk about how is it that that these public formats like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook can enjoy protection under Section 230, where you can be censored and you can't do a darn thing about it. You can't sue them because they're under this protection. So that needs to be addressed, because if they're going to not give us free speech to speak what we want. Look, folks, free speech means free speech. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, at least you're given the God-given right in the United States to be able to talk and say what you want. And then other people can respond to what you want to say. And not be canceled by these online social media formats. So again, that's going to be another video that we're going to have to go into. But going back to wokeism, what my message today is, it's to the big corporations. And I'm going to use Disney as one. Okay, I'll probably get canceled myself, but Disney has a bunch of employees that are going to boycott what's going on in Florida with the laws that are in Florida. And all it's saying is, don't teach our little tiny small children. Teach them reading, writing, math, but don't start teaching them about gender and all that other progressive stuff that that these little minds that are like sponges are soaking in, because you can ruin a child into their way of thinking, right? So give them a chance to grow up. Give them a chance to have their own mind, to have their own free will, to have their own way of thinking before you start impressing upon them what they should be thinking, rather than giving them free thought and free speech. So, but these corporations are so afraid, which I don't get. They're so afraid of the very small minority of progressive caucus, you know, with all their wokeism and with all their socialism. And we really need to, as the majority, come back and say, hey, we're not going to take this, right? We're in the majority. Now look, we don't want to repress the minority. We want them to have free speech. We want them to speak their mind, but we don't want to cancel them like they cancel us, right? We want everybody to have free speech. We don't want anybody to be canceled. So yes, tell us what your thoughts are. Tell us how you think. Don't try to teach it to our children, right? Just let us know, hey, this is the way we think. This is what we think things should be like. And let the majority of Americans who have the American ideology make a decision whether we want to go that route or not. Because honestly, I feel like we are a fair society. We look at everything and we want to give everybody as much chance in life to be successful. And that's all it is being successful and free in America. And so let's go along those lines. Let's not try to push Marxism. Let's not try to push socialism. Let's not try to push your wokeism. You know, there's enough for everybody out there to be free, to work hard, to give us their thoughts and their ideas, because that's how we've become a great country and society in the United States of America, is with all this free thought and free thinking, and not just doing what the government tells us to do and look for handouts. We don't want people who are looking for handouts in this country. And that's the socialistic way. And these progressives that are pushing this agenda, that's exactly what they're trying to push. And there's a lot of people out there who have been, a lot of younger people who have been brainwashed into thinking, yeah, I'd like a free ride. I'd like for the government to give me everything, where I could just work a little bit. Look, that is not what this country was built on. This country was built on hard work, freedom, and opportunism, okay? and give us the opportunity to be successful. And everybody has that opportunity to be successful in this country. And we don't want that changed whatsoever. So, folks, let's go ahead and keep an eye on these woke progressives and not turn this country into a socialistic country. And I'm going to leave everybody with this. This small minority in the whole scheme of things, and by minority I don't mean race. I mean they are a minor part of the democratic liberal movement, these progressives, right? So I used to belong to and I still do in some sense belong to the liberal movement, but I don't subscribe to the progressive movement that has all these socialistic and Marxism ideas. But the one thing I want to stress is we, the people, need to make our voices heard, because all you hear is about that small little part in the Democratic Party, those progressive, left-leaning people in the squad and the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're the ones that make the loudest noise. And we as the majority are saying nothing. We in the majority, well, actually, I don't know if I should even go down this road, but I think when the January 6th movement moved on the Capitol, and I'm cautious about calling it a riot. There was a small element of people, of rioters who did damage to the Capitol, who broke into the Capitol. I don't agree to that whatsoever, right? But the majority of the people that were there to hear their voices heard. And so that whole movement of majority of the people were wanting their voices heard. A very small element, like 100 or 2 out of thousands and thousands of the people who marched on the Capitol, were the bad apples, like I started this video off. And so they ruined it for everybody. And it's unfortunate that a few bad apples ruin it for the majority of the people. So don't be afraid, folks. Let your voices be heard. Don't let these big corporations cave in to a little tiny fragment of the Democratic Party, because it's not even the Democratic Party as a whole that has this way of thinking. It's just a very small. And let me just kind of bring one thing up. So, talking about the amount of people that are in the Progressive Caucus, you'll see here there are 97 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, 1 U.S. Senator, and then these are the people. The chair, Pramila Jayapal. Katie Porter is the deputy chair. The whip is Ilhan Omar, and these are the chair, Emirati. And then you have your vice chairs through here. So, this is what you're looking at as far as the progressive movement. Now, a lot of these are not the squad. A lot of these progressive movement people, these caucus members, I don't even, so I'm not even going to speak to what their ideology is. But so for the most part, and another video we're going to get into is climate change and talk about the reality of climate change and how that's really affected our country. So anyways, folks, the whole idea behind Independent News Network is to try to give us, the majority, a voice, because I feel like I don't hear anything at all from the majority of Americans who want to maintain our freedom and our level of livelihood here in the United States. And so I want this to be a format where people like me, who's an independent voter, who's independent minded, who thinks independently and with common sense, because that's something you don't see a whole lot of these days, is common sense. And common sense, just to touch real quickly on that with the climate change, I'm all for electric vehicles, electric airplanes, turning this around, but we are not there yet in society. And so all this climate change stuff is a way to force us into, and by forcing, it's with a lot of pain to our livelihood, into a society that is, well, should be mostly solar. And so even cars should be solar powered, not these electric vehicles that you come home, plug in. Where's that electricity generated from? It's generated from coal and oil and stuff like that. So you're defeating the purpose with these electric cars. Nobody talks about that, but we're going to talk about that in our next video. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let's let our voices be heard as a majority, and we don't have to get mean-spirited about it towards the progressives, but we don't have anybody, in my opinion, other than a few people out there talking about it. And that's another thing. One more thing we're going to talk about too is the social media out there, the mainstream media. We're going to talk about them on how they should just be reporting from a neutral point of view, and not leaning left and not leaning right. But, I long for the Chet Huntley and David Brinkley time period where everything was reported honestly and fairly and from a neutral standpoint, and everything was reported, not filtered. So want to thank you all for watching this video, and we will continue to make these videos for you. Please come back. If you're not yet a subscriber, we'd love to have you as a subscriber, and also hit the little bell icon or notification icon. We're going to be both on YouTube and Rumble, so if for some reason we end up getting canceled on YouTube, you could always find us on Rumble. So thank you again for watching. We'll see you in our next video.